Well, good afternoon and welcome back to another live iThemes training event. My name is Nathan Ingram and I'm the host here at iThemes Training. And we are thrilled to have with us today Rebecca Gill, who is the president of Web Savvy Marketing. Rebecca is no stranger to the iThemes Training community. She's been doing a series of excellent webinars for our community for over a year now. And today she's going to talk about keyword research. So you guys join me in welcoming Rebecca Gill back to iThemes Training. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me. All right, so let's jump in. I know there's some few people that are still coming online. Just as Nathan said, my name is Rebecca Gill. I have been doing SEO for you newcomers. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, I've been doing SEO for over 15 years. I am that old. And I've been doing keyword research for that long as well, although I will tell you the method by which we do keyword research, the tools that we have available, and the sophistication that goes into it is much different today than it was when I started 15 years ago. And on Saturday I'm speaking in Miami WordCamp, and that's the nature of the talk is, and SEO has changed through a lot over the last decade, although in some ways it's still the same. Keyword research is a huge part of that, right? Because of the way search has changed, the way users have changed, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today as we go through the process of keyword research. One thing to keep in mind with keyword research, it is part of an overall SEO process. So for you, those members that are new today and have never been through one of my presentations, I do have a lot of presentations available, and because SEO really is a full process, this is only one part of it. But on SlideShare and on YouTube, I do have a lot of other videos that will kind of help fill in the gaps for you, as well as we have some educational opportunities that can teach the process too. So with that said, let's kind of just jump in here. Okay, so I have a few rules that I like to point out, and they're all by themselves on the screen because they're super important. The first rule is don't be greedy when selecting keywords, and think of yourself as that toddler, and it's Halloween for us in the states that practice Halloween, and you dump out your bag of candy and you just want to scoop it all up and eat it all at one time. And if you do that, you're going to get sick. And the reason you get sick is it's just you can't do that. You can't have all those pieces of candy at once, and keywords are kind of the same way. You can't go after every keyword. You can't be successful at every variation of keywords. So the first rule that you have to remind yourself and have to ingrain into your thinking is that you have to be selective. You need to make sure that you're making the right keyword choices. And then as you go through and you research your keywords and you consider what you might want to optimize for and write content for, you've got to pick and choose. And that's what I want to instill with you today, and I want to take you through the process of trying to figure out how to really pick and choose what's right for you. So a little bit about my keyword formula that I have been going through for years and years. It's a 10-step process that I use, and I start by creating a list of keywords, and I use a variety of sources to get these data points. They could be anything from emails that I receive in from inquiries or PowerPoint presentations from clients, competitor websites, things that I just know that could potentially be searches. And I start to build this keyword list up, and I look at like Google auto-suggested when you start to type in a word slowly, the suggestions at the bottom of the search page. I put up a search term in Google, and I actually scan the search engine results page to see what is on that page, not just that keyword, but variations of it, or like topics, or like words that fit within that topical group. And you build up this keyword list, and it could be as small as 50 keywords if you're a really small company or you have a small website, or it could be as large as 1,000 keywords if you're large and you compete at a national or international level and you have a wide reach of content or activity. When I get that seed list done, I take out anything that would be branded. Branded meaning my company name or my product name or things that are specific to me. And the reason we take those out is because for two reasons. One, Google already knows it's who you are and what you're about, so you really don't need to optimize for those. And two, that's not what the people are really searching for. When you're trying to get them early on in their decision process, they don't know your branded words yet. So you don't want to optimize for those. So my next step is, once I've done that and I've reduced that list a little bit, I plug those words into my favorite tools, and I try to be very consistent and use the same tools so that my volumes of that I'm seeing for search, like the monthly traffic for a given keyword, is consistent, and I'm not getting 4 different tools and bringing information in from 4 different tools, which would give me 4 different sets of data, and then it would be very hard to make a decision because none of it would tie together. So I encourage you to find a good SEO tool, and I'm going to show you my favorites today, and stick with it, right? So that your data is consistent and you're looking at apples to apples as opposed to apples and oranges and pineapples. I extract information out from the tool and I build up this into a new master sheet. And the reason we extract information out and we have to consolidate it is because when we do consolidation, if you're, again, working with a very large group of keywords or a national or international level search, you could have, by the time you're done with this, 5,000 keywords that you're going to filter through. If people are using, or these tools are using Google's API, they can only bring out 700 at a time. So it's going to export you 700 terms. So you really have to, again, do batches and then consolidate in. I'm going to remove out all the unnecessary data, because those tools will give you information that means nothing to you, and do yourself a favor, just remove it out right away so that you're really only focusing on the data that counts. You will have duplicate entries, so you're going to want to sort this kind of data that you receive. I sort it in Excel, but you could do it in other types of software packages. But and there's auto filters that you can use within Excel to quickly remove out the duplicates. I didn't learn that to probably year 5 of me doing keyword research, and I can't tell you how many hours I wasted manually doing that cleanup. Again, I'm going to remove out the branded words, and I even say in the slide, yep, I'm doing this again. And the reason is because they're going to creep back in as you're pulling data and you're getting suggestions from some keyword tools. I'm going to remove out keywords that I know are just spelling errors or bad grammar, and people argue with me on this, but the reason we do it is, first of all, Google is going to automatically correct for those. And I will spell check stuff in Google because it's easier to do than try to figure it out on my own sometimes. Google gives me the right spelling, right? So it's not using those websites with the incorrectly spelled words. That's the first reason we don't do it. The second reason is bad grammar, bad spelling degrades your entire website or blog in the eyes of the search engine. So it goes against you. So never, ever, ever, please don't optimize for spelling errors. The 9th item is to remove out keywords that seem to be outside your target demographic or market. And that might seem like common sense, but you'll find yourself, as you're looking at all these keywords, kind of stretching yourself out. And you really have to think back to, okay, does my target market use this verbiage? Is this my verbiage or is this their verbiage? And if the phrase and the words don't relate to who you're selling to, pull it out, because people will not search for it, and then you end up speaking to your competitors and not necessarily your target customer or reader of your blog. So then the next thing that I do is I start to sort this data by volumes, and I remove out something that would be very large. And the reason, and by large I mean search volumes, and the reason I do this is because when you look at keywords and you see something that's super large volume, it's very generic, right? It's usually a one-word phrase. A, it's going to be hard to compete with because there's going to be well-established content for that. But B, it's not specific enough to really relate to your target demographic. And you're going to hear me continue to say target demographic because it's one of the most important things about keyword research, is making sure that the keywords that you're selecting and you're looking at using really relate to the people that you're trying to get into your website or blog. And those really broad phrases or words typically don't relate to, you know, who you're trying to market to. So they can just be completely removed. Okay, so number 2, don't rely on Google to brainstorm your keyword phrases, because they're not going to. If you expect Google, especially if you're using the AdWords tool, to only give you information or to give you all possible search terms. They're not. That AdWords tool only gives you the keywords that people are going to use for pay-per-click, because that's what it's used for. And I honestly don't even use it anymore. I don't pay for advertising, so it's been removed off of my options for keywords research. And I give you this rule number 2 because you have to sit down, and the onus is on you to really sit there and think through the variations or what your target demographic might be searching for. And you can do research, and you can do interviews, and you can look at, past proposals or whatever else, sales sheets or product descriptions, whatever it is that you have to figure out a starting list of keywords. But you can't rely on Google or other third parties, because they're going to a lot of times push you towards higher volume stuff, and you would lose a lot of the lower volume, really good sweet spot type of search terms that will really be easier to optimize on and really relate to who you're marketing to. Okay, so this diagram is to show you kind of that thought process that you can go through in selecting and brainstorming some keywords for like a seed list. If you sat through our last webinar, which was on competitive research, I used the different web hosting companies for that exercise, and I use them in my competitive resource course too. So I thought I would continue with that thought process and use hosting as our example for today as we go through keyword research. So the middle circle is hosting. Let's say we just started out with generic hosting, and we thought for a second, what would be those phrases that we could potentially start building up in a keyword list if we are a WordPress hosting company, or not even WordPress, could be really any hosting company for websites. So the little blue guys are around there are just ones I came up with as I was thinking. So hosting became more specific and went to website hosting. It could be even more specific and go to WordPress hosting, or we could get even more granular and go to manage WordPress hosting. We could get further down with our focus, and this was supposed to say WooCommerce hosting. I don't know what happened to my little hosting guy, but that would be even more specific. Or we could start thinking as in long-tail search, or those more complex phrases, and particularly voice search, and start to think about questions. What is web hosting? Which is this guy over here, or best hosting for WordPress. When I started with SEO 15 years ago, we focused for this red guy right in the middle, the bullseye. That's what we went for, because at that time, that's the way people searched. Search was much more generic. The search engines didn't have the sophistication that they have now to be able to really dig in and find some really good content in that artificial intelligence that they have available. Though they have it now. We have voice search. And for those of you that are new, there's more search done on mobile devices now in Google than there are on desktops. And 20% of search is done by voice. And so when you have that voice search happening, the nature of search changes. Examples are, my son asked Google Home, is mac and cheese healthy? And she came back with an answer. She told him that it could be a lot more healthier if he added cauliflower to it. And then she proceeded to tell him a recipe for this. Now, that wasn't at all what he wanted to hear, but think about the nature of that complex search that was just done, right? Because that is how those devices are answering questions. They're using schema, and they're using the knowledge panel within Google to be able to give back those complex answers. So as you're doing keyword research, you can't just think old school like hosting like I used to use 15 years ago. You have to think about today, and you have to think about who's searching today. It is my 11-year-old son. It is my daughter who's 17 and is sitting doing her homework and asks Google via voice the relationship between a centimeter and a meter, because she doesn't know it off the top of her head, and she surely knows I don't know it either. That is the nature of search. That's why keyword research is so important. It is getting more and more complex, and you can't just go with what you think. You have to do research to figure out what the world around you uses and what the way their minds think. So rule number 3, I'm going to reiterate this throughout the whole presentation. Keywords should equal your customer's verbiage and should not be industry jargon. And this is important because even when I get with mid-market companies and people who have marketers on staff, right, inside their offices, and they may be really seasoned marketers, they're so ingrained in their own verbiage and the way that they talk about things internally, and maybe it's their engineers or it's the president of the company or their sales reps, that they really forget what people outside their company uses for search terms. And you constantly have to be reminding yourself of that. So there's 2 rules that I want you to remember. One is complex searches are dominating what is happening in search right now, and remind yourself continuously as you go through this process, think outside your box. Think about who is coming to your website or you want to come to your website, and think about their terms. One more thing to note here is when I work with clients for SEO, especially people who have done a little bit of SEO on their own in the past, they say, well, no one searches for that if you give them a term. And they say, well, we've never had any business come from that. And they automatically start to discount a phrase because of that. But what the reality is they've never optimized for it well, so they don't get traffic in for it, so they never have seen any activity coming from those phrases. It doesn't mean people haven't been searching for them. It's just the people that have been finding them have never searched for them and actually found their website and converted it into whatever that output is that they desire. So again, you have to force yourself to think outside your box, force yourself into thinking about the world as a whole and what your target demographic would potentially be using and the words they use. When I'm building up the seed list, I told you that was my really first step that I do. Where can you kind of get this data? And this is why the slides are important, and I have slides for today because I really want you to take away that there's a lot of places you can get information. So your own ideas is to start with. Get a piece of paper, get Excel, use Google Documents, start putting that list together. Just free form it, just however it is easiest for you to do it. I don't care if you stick Post-it notes all over your walls. Start making yourself a list, and every time you think of a keyword, throw it on this list. Now manually do variations, and you'll realize that that one phrase that you thought of could really be 20 different phrases. So what would be variations of it? You could do WordPress template, WordPress theme, WordPress child theme, Genesis theme, and it's all, can be very similar, but you start to have all these variations. And once you get yourself into the process of doing this, you literally can take one word and make it into 20. And when you do that for like your first 20 phrases that you've thought of, now you have 200 different variations that you can research and potentially use. I encourage my clients, and I use this myself, reports and presentations and emails. The interesting thing I find about businesses is your website can be stale, but your PowerPoint presentations are usually not. And so I always ask for them, if there are sales presentations, I want to know what the most frequent or the newest information that the sales team is pushing out, because that might have new, fresh keywords that people haven't been thinking of. Google Search Console, the search analytics, super important, because this is showing you where you're showing up in search and not necessarily where people have actually landed on your website. Search Console will actually give you data, and you could be sitting on page 9 in the search engine results page never knowing that you're showing up for this, but if you look at those reports, you can find that information out, and you can easily export that out to Excel to help kickstart your seed list. And I like to look at that report and go, holy cow, I didn't even think of that search term. Well, if they search for this, here's 5 other things that they might be searching for as well. Google Analytics always has good information. You can look for what people search for on your site if you're tracking that, as well as the search terms over time. The AdWords reports, this is only now for advertisers, and if you've ever listened to me before, you know I think pay-per-click is like cocaine for marketers, and you spend your money really quick and there's no residual value. And SEO can live for 10 years. It really, I have proof of that. So I discount this one more and more every day. Sorry, Google. The next one is Google's auto-suggest and the related searches. So as you slowly type in WordPress or slowly type in hosting in the search box, what does Google try to populate for you? All of those are potentially search terms that you can consider, and then the items at the very bottom of the page, that the related search terms as well. Bing Webmaster Tools, if you've been using that, Bing collects data for you. Competitors, visual content, and sitemaps. This was last month's presentation. If you didn't sit through it, that is a wonderful way to find out some great keyword information. So go back and revisit that webinar either on my YouTube channel or via the iThemes content library. Competitors, meta titles, and descriptions. And some of those little competitors are still using meta keywords, even though the only people that use them is the search engines, and for bad. So look there, and a great tool to be able to find that information is the Moz toolbar, M-O-Z toolbar, for those of you that this tool is new to. I love using Spyfu and SEMRush, and we're going to look at those two today just to kind of give you an idea of what data is available. And I love looking at KW Finder. And KW Finder I will use a lot today too. Spyfu and SEMRush, they are paid for programs. This guy gives you, Spyfu gives you more information for free than SEMRush does. KW Finder, it is paid for, but it is relatively cheap. It is worth its money in gold, in my opinion, and I'm not an affiliate in any form for them, so I'm telling you that because I really think it's a wonderful tool for you. Okay, so rule number 4, pick your battles. You're not going to win in every keyword phrase, so don't waste your valuable time trying. And I can't stress that enough. So don't get caught up in the I have to have, right? Don't be that Halloween candy, because you don't need to have every candy bar there. You need to pick the best ones that are for you or for your target demographic. I'm reiterating these because it is so important, and this is how people trip up. And I don't want you to trip up. I want you to be successful, which is why I'm here today trying to teach you my process and give you some information. So remember, pick your battles, pick the right ones, not everyone. Okay, so let's dig into some of the keyword data. There's a number of tools that you can look at. So this guy over here is Moz. This guy right here is SEMRush. And we are going to look at these. And this guy right here is Spyfu. And I have these in here just to give you kind of examples. They're all giving you similar information. So like the Moz is telling us that the search volume monthly for hosting is between 11,000 and 30,000. Spyfu is telling us it's roughly 14,000, and SEMRush is saying it's 9,000. Now, don't get stressed out that these numbers aren't exact. They're to give you guidance, right? You don't have to have the exact precision on down to a decimal point on the search volumes. You need to have ideas of what people search for, and that's what these tools are wonderful for. This next one is KW Finder, and I really truly love KW Finder. Again, it's an inexpensive tool. It gives you a variety of information. It gives you the search volumes that are important and suggests search terms to you, but it also gives you some wonderful information on who's already ranking and why they're ranking. So we're going to look at that in depth today. Okay, so are we ready for some real-world examples? If you would like, you can, and you're all at your computer, so if you want to pull up KW Finder, please feel free to do that. Just pull it up, and it will let you to have like 1 or 2, 3 keyword searches per day without paying for it. So please feel free if you want to do that. I'll give you a second just to pull it up. All right, let me jump over to that. Oops. Good heavens. All right, I will make this guy bigger. So let's look real quick. I had mentioned Spyfu, and this is the Spyfu data, and I know now that I made that big that people are going to have a hard time seeing that, so let me make him bigger. And if this is still not bigger, please just send a chat to Nathan and he'll jump in and scream at me. Okay, so Spyfu. I just typed in hosting and we see it's 14,000 searches per month. Local, 200,000 global. There is some keyword data here as well. It gives us a ranking difficulty, and I'm not going to look too much at that because I would rather you use the KW Finder information for that. The number of top results in the first 50 listings that are home pages is 12, and that just kind of gives you a little idea of complexity of that search. So a free tool for limited data, it's available. I did like Spyfu a lot until I found SEMRush. And once I got to SEMRush, I was like, wow, this is an amazing tool. So this is similar data as Spyfu. Now we're starting to see it a little bit more graphical. So there's the 9,000 volume. I like this because it's giving us the trends of search. It gives us some phrases match keywords, family food host. Well, that is just funny. Sometimes you got to take keyword data and just ignore it, and that's a great example of it. But it gives us the variation. Yep, forgot about that one for sure. How's that? Maybe one more? Okay, so there's the family feud host that I was talking about. This is the kind of stuff that you ignore. QVC host, okay, ignore that. Those are just very funny. But you get down to web hosting, you're like, okay, this makes a little bit more sense, right? So now I'm starting to see data that makes sense. You can look at it this way, right? Or I could come in and I could say, you know what, I'd like to actually see some data for competitor of mine. So let me look at SiteGround. So now if you missed our presentation last month, you can get lots of wonderful data for your competitors through these tools, right? And they'll actually let you export it, which is an amazing feature. Domain. This is the one that I want. So now I get to see lots of things, all the keywords that SiteGround is ranking for. I didn't plan on showing you this, but since we had so many new people today, I wanted to make sure that you knew this was available. And I can see all of these keywords of my competitors, and I can export it right here with this little button to a nice, pretty spreadsheet. So wonderful, this information, and it's just, again, for keyword research, even if you pay for this tool for just a month, it's really worth it. So now let's go over to KW hosting. This is my favorite. And it's slicing mangoes for me, which is never good when I see that. So there we go. So now let me zoom in. All right, let's analyze hosting. And I'm going to start with suggestions because that's more natural. Now, I'm not really digging everything that I'm seeing, so I'm going to put in website hosting. So what happens when I put in website hosting is I can be very generic and I can just type in website hosting, or I can start to be more specific and say I'd like it for a specific country, which I could do. I can pick languages, or I can filter my results, which is even better. So say you realize that you're a new blogger and you're not going to be able to compete in an environment that has 50,000 searches a month because you're brand new. So maybe you could say, we'll look at a 0 min, which is 0 searches per month, and I'm going to go up to 2,000 searches per month. And you can actually do number of words too. I can say I want to have at least 2 words in my results, and let's see what happens. And now you notice that when I did that, the search volumes all dropped below that 2,000, right? And I have at least 2 or more words. And some of these may be great, some of these may be horrendous, but there's down there's 600. So I can start adding these to a list, and I actually have a list started. If I wanted to pull them all out, I could export them quickly with just this little button, which will push them into a spreadsheet for me. Let me look at my list. So here's a list that I pulled up earlier that I thought would be good examples for you. So let's say that I started with hosting, and that is really generic because it could be a lot of different types of hosting, and it's 135,000 searches per month. Well, that would be difficult, and it's not really specific enough and target enough for my particular target demographic. So let's go to website hosting. How about that one? Well, that's 33,000 searches per month. Okay, it's more specific, but maybe that's still not really what I need. So now let's go to Manage WordPress Hosting. And notice as I click on Manage WordPress Hosting, this information over here is shifting. And what's happening is it's showing me the search volumes right here. This is showing me trends in the search. And you can see that small business web hosting peaked up in December and then came back down again. Probably people were thinking that they were paying too much and they were looking for alternatives. Then the next column after search is cost per click. Now, while I do not pay for cost per click and I don't buy ads, I do like to look at the amount people are spending, because people are spending up to $20 per click on this search term. That is an indication to me that that might be a good converter, so I might want to consider that for organic search. I ignore pay per click difficulty because that's for advertising, but I do look at this guy. This guy shows me the organic difficulty. So how hard would it be to potentially rank on that? And this number right here is going to translate over to this guy when we click on him, right? And all this tool's got really nice little informations that when you hover over it, they pop up. What I love about this tool too is I can come over here and look at this and start to see information. And I see for Manage WordPress Hosting, who's already showing up on page 1. And you know, this is a space I'm familiar with, and that's why I like to use it, because you can kind of get a feel for, are they big, are they small, what kind of information do they have? And if you're not really familiar with it, that's okay, because you can use this data to help you. Like, this is domain authority, this is page authority. So this is telling you as a whole, does that website have a lot of authority with search? Well, some of them do. GoDaddy is 70. So, you know, you have to kind of look at that and go, okay, well, it's 96. That's a really high domain authority. They're going to be potentially hard to beat. So now let's look at somebody else. Data, not always right with these reports. WP Engine has a 1. That's not accurate. We know WP Engine's a way better company than just a 1. So I have to discount that data and just know that that's false. I look at Code in WP and they're a 48. Definitely doesn't have the clout that GoDaddy has, so maybe there's some wiggle room. Then you have the page authority. So this is metrics on just this specific page and the page that's ranking for this phrase. Similar to domain, but it's again specific to the page. The other good important things that you should look at are links and Facebook and Google. So this is the number of links coming in, and I'll show you an example of where this gets really skewed. And then you've got Facebook and Google+. And while these are all pretty much the same, it shows you that nobody's really link building to try to boost their ranking here, which is a good thing for us if we want to compete with it. Nobody's super heavy with social except for WP Beginner. Again, gives us opportunities to know that we could potentially beat them. And so green is easier to rank with, and then it goes up to red, which is hard to rank with. Watch how this data over here shifts when I click on small business hosting. Here's something I want to pay attention. The link column right here, this number 1 position has 40,000 links being generated into this URL. That is going to make it really hard to try to compete and to blow them out, because links still, those inbound links coming into a website and coming into a specific URL do count for ranking with SEO still. It used to count a lot more a decade ago, but it still counts today. Consider it like votes for the homecoming queen. All of those links are votes, and they're votes for popularity, and the search engines will use that along with the social metrics here to decide who potentially has more clout and more interest. And it's basically just trying to, the search engines use it to make sure that somebody other than your mom reads your website or blog, right? That's what those links and those social shares are used for. Does anybody other than you or your employees or your dog or your cat or your mom pay attention to your blog or your website? Yes, they do if they see links and social shares. So you have to take these columns into account to say, okay, well, this guy would be hard to beat. So doesn't mean I'm gonna blow away from that keyword phrase. It just means I gotta look at that and say, okay, I probably can't beat them. But there's other people on this that you could beat. Let's look at this reviews. It's got a 16, so the software thinks you could potentially rank against them. The domain has 62 as their their rank, their authority. So that's fairly decent, but the page has only got a 1. There's no social shares, there's no links. That tells you that there's potential opportunities to win there. And that's why I love these tools so much, is because it is giving you some really powerful information. You're not finding that elsewhere, right? You're finding it on KW Finder, and that's a wealth of information. Some other cool things that you can do with KW Finder is, let me go back to just hosting. I'm going to go to hosting, and I want to go to autocomplete. So this is going to bring up what Google is giving in the autocomplete. Remember I said you could slowly type? Well, if you've got a subscription to KW Finder, you don't have to. Just stick it in here and it will give you this, and you can export it. Here's all the autocomplete. So as you type in hosting, here's what Google gives you back. Okay, hosting a party doesn't count. We don't need that, but we might want to look at some of the other ones, right? The other cool one is let's look at that voice search, that complex search with questions, the knowledge graph. What are people asking in the form of questions that are driving search volumes? Now in these, the volumes, I believe, are always lower than they actually are, because you bring in through those questions a variety of search phrases. So don't let these lower volumes scare you. But again, this is really good information, and it's great for brainstorming what you potentially want to go after, as well as getting some data on who's ranking and how difficult it is. One thing to note is you can import keywords. So when you come into KW Finder, if you'd like, you can either type in a bunch of keywords, and so I can go web host, WordPress hosting. I can continue to do that, or if I want, I can add a file in. I can copy and paste a bunch in, or I can import a file, and I can do up to 700. And the reason you can do up to 700 is because, again, this is going to the Google API, and that's what Google allows. So great if you've built up a seed list and you've been doing that brainstorming offline, to take your Excel spreadsheet and drop those keywords in here, because now you'll magically get volumes for all of that and get some great competitive data, so that can make your decision process better and much faster. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. I did put some of this information in the slides because I wanted you to have a takeaway, right? So I used my example that I just showed you, and I actually compared, I guess I forgot I did this, small business web hosting with WooCommerce hosting, right? So let's look at these two together. Which one would you say is better? So the first question I would have you ask yourself is, who's a better fit for your target demographic, right? Are you doing WooCommerce hosting, or are you doing small business website hosting? If you do a ton of WooCommerce, well then WooCommerce is potentially a better fit. If you don't do a lot of WooCommerce and you do more just generic small business, then maybe that one's a better fit. Now let's look to say who's better for your target demographic and what they search for. Does your potential customer even know what WooCommerce is yet, or do they think it's e-commerce? So you have to keep in mind, what is their vocabulary. Review the difficulty, which is the next thing you should do, which is this guy right here. Review search trends, because remember I said small business peaks up in December and then comes way back down. So maybe that's seasonal, but it's not going to sustain you all year long. Consider the PPC amounts to see what those higher bids are, so you know if they are potentially really good converting terms. And then I want you to dig a little deeper. And so when I ask dig a little deeper is to consider those links that we looked at, right? To see what's happening with that and what off-site activity is happening with those websites, as well as the overall ranking, as well as, don't forget, the social as too. And then I want you to actually dig even farther, right? So if you're at your browser, go ahead and type in WooCommerce hosting, and you'll have the page results come up. And so some of those for the ones that we had in KW Finder. So Pagely came up, and Winning WP, and then Chris Lemma's blog came up, okay? And what I wanted to do is I took and again, so you also have a takeaway, is I did a screenshot of each one of those. Because you kind of look at them and you go, well, there's not, maybe I could beat them all, maybe. I think I could beat them all. But you really, if this is something that you're going to be passionate, it really is one of your core phrases, you need to even go further and look at the content itself, because the quality and the amount of content is going to make or break your ability to rank. So this first guy right here is Pagely. It's a small sales page. There's very limited information on it. I mean, it's very limited content, right? So when you look at it, could you beat that? Yes, you could. I don't think I had a lot of outside factors going on with links and with social search. So yes, you could potentially beat that. The next one's Winning WP. Well, it's got more content, but it's just really information about these 3 different providers, and it's not giving you anything super unique or informative. Now let's look at Chris Lumma's blog. If you know Chris Lumma, you know he blogs frequently. He's got a lot of authority with the search engines in the land of WordPress. And he has a lot of activity with both social shares, links coming into his site, and comments on his blog. This is his blog post, and this is just the blog post. It doesn't even include the comments. I couldn't fit it on. Look at the length of content and the amount of content of these 3 pieces, these websites, right? Who can you beat? You can beat Pagely. You most likely can beat WP. Winning WP, you're going to have a hard time coming against this guy because it is such a rich, solid blog post with good information and good user interaction. So, the point here is that the keyword research isn't just numbers, right? You have to look at more than search volumes. You have to consider the target demographic. You have to consider who's ranking on page 1, what kind of quality do they have, how much content do they have, and then also look at those off-site factors of links coming into the content as well as the social shares. Rule number 5, know your competition. This includes direct competitors and competitors in SERPs, or search engine results pages. I say this because I'm ingrained, you're ingrained, my clients are ingrained to only think of competition being the people that they sell to, or the people they sell against, right? So if you sell a widget, it's those people that also sell those same widgets. But that's not really who your online competition is. When we looked at those examples, right, if we go back to KW Finder, let's see if I can just get the results real quick. And if not, I'll change it because I want to. Okay, so if we were to look at web host, right, and if I'm GoDaddy and I'm thinking of my competition would be SiteGround and Media Temple and other hosting companies, Bluehost, right? Look at this page 1 search results. These are not direct competitors. Wikipedia, PC Magazine, I don't even know what this website is, website.com. Those are not hosting companies, but they are online competitors. So when you are doing competitor research, make sure that you don't just look at the people that you know of as competitors. Look at who else is ranking on the phrases that you want and consider them as competitors as well, because really with keyword research, they will make or break your success. Okay, some key points to remember, some takeaways for you, and I want to leave time for questions. So don't optimize for your branded search terms. We talked about that. Don't optimize for spelling errors. Zero search volumes aren't always zero, especially if you're getting your data from Google. I know this firsthand because I know people and I've had their Google Search Console reports where I can see traffic coming into their website or blog through those phrases, yet Google still shows that as zero search volume. So take that with a grain of salt. Low volume search terms are still great for blog posts. They're easier to rank in the short term. They help support your cornerstone or those bigger dollar value items, and they provide great fresh content. The PPC dollar amount should be reviewed because it gives you an indication of what could be high converters. Remember to look at all areas of your website when you're considering your search volumes. It's not just the cornerstone pages. It's also things like products or training material or white papers and ebooks and tags and categories. I get a lot of traffic from one of my blog categories, and I'm floored that it happens, but it does. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about where to potentially apply your keywords. Okay, don't lose sight of your target market. Whew, I'm like a broken record with that, aren't I? I just keep saying it over and over and over again, but that's because it's so critical to this process. Look beyond search volumes, all those things we talked about, trends, domain authority, inbound links, social shares, content length and quality. Remember Chris Lema's blog and know that you're not going to beat him. Estimated visits, because that's going to factor in too. 9, never give up. You can beat the big guys if you want. When I was learning SEO, I could compete and beat Microsoft because I was focused and I had a structured plan, right? If I can do that, 10 years ago when I was just starting out, you can do that today with some really good, solid education and some sweat equity, coming out of yourself. You're not done with this process. This is just one step in an overall process. You have to now map these keywords that you're deciding on to content within your website or blog, and it needs to be a 1-to-1 ratio. Learn a full SEO process. If you don't know how SEO really works from start to finish, then you need to get some further education. And we are ready for questions, and I'm right on 4:55 or 2:45. Woohoo!
Fantastic information as always, Rebecca. Thanks for all of that you've given us today. Before we get into questions, I have a few that we recorded throughout the training today.
Okay.
Feel free to go ahead and post some additional questions there in the chat room. Before we get there, I do want to let you guys know about 3 really great opportunities to continue to receive training from Rebecca. The first you'll find, actually all 3 are there in the right sidebar of ithemes.com/chat. The first is about 4 weeks from now, we'll be having the SEO Summit here at iThemes Training. That's April 24th, 25th, and 26th. And Rebecca will be giving us 9 hours of very detailed, intensive SEO training. And you'll find the link there as well as a coupon code for $50 off. Rebecca, you want to talk about that just for a second?
Let me jump in there just real quick with that. So just explain what SEO Summit is. So SEO Summit's 3 days. It's mornings, or we're trying to do the late mornings so we can get the overseas crowd and not disrupt your day if you wanted to attend. But so we're going to have blocks of time every day. You are going to have homework sent to you before SEO Summit starts. So I'm going to be dripping emails to you leading up to it, and you have homework that you need to do before you come. And I want you to have that homework ready so that when we are going through the education, you have that homework sitting in front of you because you're going to use it. So then we're going to have education, and you are going to take that education for each day, and then after the education session's done, you are going to have your homework again, right? And this whole process is to help you create your SEO process, and the homework before and during the SEO Summit is going to reinforce the information that you're learning. Very important that you're going to do the homework, and don't sign up for SEO Summit if you're not going to do any homework, because you won't take away what you need to, right? But again, the SEO Summit is to teach you the whole process, my start to end process, where keyword research is part of that process, but it's not the whole process, it's just a segment of it. So if you sat through today and you're like, okay, well, this is great, but I have no idea how this keyword research fits anywhere else, or what to do with it, or what I should have done beforehand, then SEO Summit is for you. Okay, I'm done, Nathan.
Awesome. And you guys, I don't know about you, but I love the approach that Rebecca has on this summit, particularly with the homework and the post-work. I've been to so many seminars where you leave with a lot of thoughts but no concrete action, and this is not going to be one of those events. You'll be able to have some...
And we learned that through the attendees of our first SEO Bootcamp. They said the homework was really important. The pre-homework before they came, so I'd had the same approach, and then we actually sat together and did homework in class, and then when they wanted to go to the bar at night, I'm like, no, you've got homework you have to do. And so that homework was really vital to that process, and so I know that that's important, and I use that same approach. So SEO Summit and SEO Bootcamp are similar. SEO Bootcamp is a lot more expensive. It's in person. It's actually taking place at the iThemes offices in May. I would love to have you attend, because in person is a wonderful learning experience, because it's not just me telling you information, you're learning from those around you, which is really important. But I know not everybody can make SEO Bootcamp in person, therefore we're doing a mini version of that with SEO Summit. And if you don't like that type of learning environment and you just want to go at your own pace, then the DIY SEO courses, the top course, is 8 hours of education, and then also like probably 16 or more hours of homework. I keep coming back to this homework thing because it is all about the whole SEO process. So that's just kind of an overview, and now I'll shut up.
That's great information. And there's a good question in the chat room, Rebecca, about Bootcamp versus Summit. And is there different content between those events?
So there's not, the process is going to be similar, although because I have you for longer at SEO Bootcamp, you're going to have more information, and then we're going to have more interactive. So at SEO Bootcamp, we do lessons in the morning, and then the afternoon we spend the entire time together where you're doing homework, and then we're doing one-on-one coaching sessions. So I move around the room and I work one-on-one with people, whether it's your homework or you just have other questions that pertain to your website or your blog. So the process is similar, but the information will be more at SEO Bootcamp, and then it'll be much more personalized, because I can't do that personalization that I have with the SEO Summit. But the benefit of SEO Summit is we get to reach a lot more people that can't physically come to iThemes and meet us in person.
Excellent. So I hope you guys, if you have enjoyed Rebecca's training like I have over the last several months, hope you'll take advantage of one of these offerings to receive further training. Also, in the link of the sidebar on the chat room page, you'll find a registration link to the rest of Rebecca's webinars. She has one a month here through the end of the year, I believe. So we're just really happy to have her as part of our team here at iThemes Training. I do want to mention just again that if you are an iThemes Toolkit member or a member of iThemes Training currently, you do receive access to that SEO Summit at no additional charge as part of your membership. So let's circle back around to a few questions here. I do want to drop in the link to today's slides in the chat room. There were about 68 requests for those throughout the last hour. And if you have questions, please drop those in the chat room now. I'm going to get to a couple of these that I've already recorded, and we'll do our best to get to your questions as well. So early on, Rebecca, we had a question from Dancing Mud who asked, way back on rule number 1, you mentioned using a variety of sources and data points. What are some examples of those?
We went through some of them in the presentation slides. So one of those slides that I had that you can download definitely goes through those, right? Like emails, your competitors, Google, interviews with people that might potentially be your target market or like your target demographic, right? Ask them questions, ask them what they would search for. Those are those data points that I'm talking about. Google Search Console.
Awesome. John asked, and this is a really good question, do you have any suggestions for keyword optimization for membership sites where the content is partially protected? Okay,
so yeah, where the content's, you cannot optimize any content that's protected. I know that there's like the first click free and things like that, but don't try to optimize anything that's behind a gate or a subscription, because it's just not going to work, right? You can't build links into it easily. Just, apply those keywords somewhere else.
Excellent. Pete Taubman asked, I think actually you just answered that question in the chat room, but there was a question about, at the end of SEO Bootcamp, would a person be qualified to do SEO work for billable to clients? You want to just talk about that a little bit, Rebecca?
Yeah, so Sarah Dunn's a great example. She came to the first bootcamp, and she came for herself, and I really wanted her to come because she just was so excited over it. And she immediately went back and she adjusted. She didn't even create new content. She just adjusted her existing clients' websites for what she learned. And I think she said she went from like page 3 on Google to mid or top of page 1 within a couple of weeks. So it does teach you how to optimize for both yourself and your clients. And you do have one-on-one time with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions during that time frame specific to selling those SEO services, and really how to maximize your time that you're spending into it, as well as bringing that back so that you're giving your clients the best. Because that's the goal of it, right? Is you need to optimize the time that you're spending so you're not wasting your time, because your time is valuable, but you need to make sure that your client's getting the most out of it. And we do talk about that, and I'm happy to work with you one-on-one in the afternoon on bootcamp to make that even that education stronger.
Excellent. And Cheryl had asked earlier about whether the webinar replays would be available overnight during that event. And Cheryl, there's some technical hurdles to overcome there, but we'll see if we can do that, because I know that would be helpful to you guys. Alex is asking, Rebecca, how important are long tail keywords to increasing traffic?
Huge. and more important today than where they were yesterday. Because think about that question that my son asked, right? Is mac and cheese healthy? That is a long tail search term. Those long tail search terms not only reach a whole new demographic that was never even on search, like my son or the older generation. I mean, the older generation puts please and thank you in search phrases, right? They say, Google, could you please tell me? And then they put they put the phrase, I don't want you to optimize for that, but it's important for you to know that those longer tail search terms and phrases are becoming more and more important because the people searching are changing, as well as the way that we search. And I push you farther away from those shorter, higher volume phrases and more to the long tail, because it's the way the world is moving, and because they will be a much greater target for the people that you're trying to reach.
Oh, it is amazing just the advances that have happened in the last, or the changes that have happened in the last year with SEO, and I think we're on the cusp of a lot more. Really interesting conversation. Here's another question for you, Rebecca, from Art Science. Do you have any tips about free tools for keyword research?
There is a blog post on my website, on my Web Savvy website, and if you go to it, it's either on the first page of the blog or the second page. I actually go through, I don't know, like 25 different tools that I reviewed before I decided on KW Finder, and I tell you pros and cons of each tool. So go there, because that's a great list to look at, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, all the ones, but I did review like 25, and I listed every single one that I went through.
Excellent. Yeah, so there's a good request here. Maybe Kristen, you can communicate this higher up that maybe we have an SEO Bootcamp somewhere near the ocean. I wouldn't mind that at all.
You know what? If we do a new one, I've realized that the location I do it at does not matter. And people would really like nicer locations. It will be Florida, or it will be California, or someplace nice and warm, because apparently that is what people want. I did not realize that when I booked the first two, but yes, people want it to be in a warm location. So yes, if you've got suggestions, shoot them to me via Twitter or my website, because I would love to hear where the group would like to have the next one held.
So Susan is in the Dutch Caribbean, so she said we can all come to her place.
All right, excellent. Find me a venue.
It's a comment, but it's also a question, I think, that would be helpful for many of us that are working with clients. Someone, let's see if I can find who it was, Stacy mentioned that she has a client that's heating and air conditioning repair, and that client insists on using HVAC as one of the key phrases. That gets to jargon.
Yes.
How do you convince a client not to do that?
Data, right? Data. Yes, because in their mind, they're HVAC. They're HVAC, but the general public does not look for HVAC. They look for air conditioning repair, furnace repair, Lennox furnace repairman. That's the things that they look for, right? So your client can search and optimize for HVAC all they want, but it is not going to resonate with who they are trying to sell to. And the easiest way to prove that to them is search volumes. Go and build them up a keyword search list in KW Finder. Show them the volumes. You can drill down into areas and show them the volumes, and show them that the real people that, they don't search for that. And if you have to, go do an interview. Say, okay, can I interview, would you mind if I interviewed 20 of your clients, your existing clients, and then call them up and ask them. And that way it's coming from people that they know, and they will be more inclined to believe you, because people don't search for HVAC. Other HVAC contractors search for HVAC.
Oh, Alfonso has a question here. Is there a rule of thumb about the priority or weight of SEO signals that deliver the most SEO juice for Facebook likes, Google reviews, blog posts, that sort of thing?
Oh, SEO juice. That is my least favorite term ever, and that's because people get caught up in it. So don't get caught up in that minutia, right? You're going to go down a rabbit hole. What you need to remember is incoming links matter, right? From a variety of sources, not just one source, but a variety of sources. Facebook, shares, comments, like, all matter. Google Plus, even if you think they don't matter, they still matter. Reviews are very important for local. So if you're targeting a local demographic and it's a local business, they need to have reviews. And people will say, I don't want to be on Facebook, but they need to be on Facebook. They need to have reviews, and you need to connect those accounts so that Google will know that their local Google Plus or whatever it's called, Google My Business account now, is associated with a Facebook account or a Yelp account, so it can bring in those reviews and use those towards the algorithm ranking them. Nathan, did we lose you? Or are you still there?
I'm here. I was talking to a muted microphone, so I'm awesome.
So that's why I wanted to make sure we could.
You're not the only one. So Andre has a great question here. He owns a Hampton Inn in Western Oklahoma. His biggest competitor is a local La Quinta. You mentioned earlier to avoid branded keywords. How would he deal with that when he's trying to, searching for hotel in a certain city?
So what does your hotel offer that the La Quinta does not? Do you have conference rooms? Are you pet friendly? Do you have, that's a way to differentiate yourself and to have content, right? That you could present to target specific people and not just a broad base. The Hampton Inn in a city is really hard for you because you compete with all those large hotel sites, and Google's putting more and more of that information inside the search results page. So you got to be creative. You have to think like, I'd have a blog and I'd start talking about dog friendly, if you're visiting whatever city you're in and you're bringing your dog, showcase your hotel in the blog post, but also talk about restaurants or bars or wherever else, parks that you could take your dog and do. I mean, that's just one example, but target people that way as opposed to trying to go after and compete against those large hotels.com and Expedia.com.
Awesome. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for investing the last hour with us. It's been a great webinar, lots of good questions, lots of great answers. I do want to invite you guys again to make use of the links that are there in the sidebar at ithemes.com/chat and all the other training opportunities that Rebecca is offering to you guys. So join me in thanking again Rebecca Gill for being with us today. I appreciate all of you being here as well. We will see you next time on iThemes Training.